Washington, D.C. looks incredible on postcards, but functions like a bureaucratic maze. The entire city operates under a height restriction that caps most buildings at 130 feet. This sounds reasonable until you realize it creates artificial scarcity in a city where housing costs have increased 89% since 2010. The height limit was established in 1910 based on street widths regarding fire safety, not merely for aesthetics. Now hundreds of thousands of federal workers compete for limited housing stock while staring at a building most of them cannot afford to live near. The federal district design creates a governance nightmare that affects daily life. D.C. residents pay federal taxes but had no congressional voting representation until recent changes granted limited autonomy. The city cannot pass its own budget without congressional approval. Your potholes require approval from representatives elected by people who have never visited your neighborhood. The monumental core looks majestic but creates a dead zone after 6 p.m. when government workers evacuate. Ottawa decided that being the capital of the second largest country meant building for bureaucrats, not humans. The Parliament Hill complex sits isolated on a bluff overlooking the Ottawa River, architecturally stunning but functionally disconnected from the city below. Walking from Parliament to the Byward Market requires navigating steep terrain and inconsistent sidewalk maintenance that becomes treacherous 6 months per year. Remember those brutal Canadian winters everyone jokes about? Ottawa experiences average January temperatures of -10 Celsius, with frequent drops to -25. The city planning completely ignored this reality. Bus shelters provide minimal protection from wind. Pedestrian connections between government buildings require outdoor exposure that makes winter commuting genuinely hazardous. The underground tunnel system connecting some buildings is limited to federal property, leaving regular residents freezing between stops. The bilingual signage situation creates navigation chaos that residents accept as normal. English and French requirements mean every sign contains double the text. Street names switch languages depending on which side of the river you occupy, and emergency communications must satisfy both language communities before reaching anyone. Canberra is what happens when you build a city for a competition rather than for people. The parliamentary triangle sits magnificently isolated from everything else, connected by broad ceremonial boulevards that prioritize automotive processions over daily transportation. The artificial Lake Burley Griffin looks beautiful in photographs, but took 50 years to fill after the original 1912 design because funding never materialized. The city functions as a collection of disconnected villages rather than a unified capital. Traveling from Belconnen to Tuggeranong requires crossing the entire metropolitan area because planners scattered employment centers across maximum distance. Public transit ridership remains among the lowest of any Australian city because the dispersed design makes efficient routes mathematically impossible. Your commute takes 45 minutes because someone in 1912 thought spreading things out would be elegant. The architecture lacks any iconic identity beyond the Parliament House buried into Capitol Hill. The city that was supposed to represent Australian ambition ended up representing Australian committee decisions. London proves that even ancient cities can make modern mistakes. The tube system carries 5 million passengers daily through infrastructure designed for 2 million. Platform overcrowding has become so severe that stations regularly close during peak hours because passengers physically cannot fit. The Central Line runs trains from the 1990s inside poorly ventilated tunnels from the 1890s, where summer temperatures regularly exceed 35 degrees Celsius. The Metropolitan Greenbelt was supposed to prevent urban sprawl by protecting surrounding countryside. Instead, it created a housing crisis that forces workers to commute from towns 50 miles away because building within the protected zone is nearly impossible. Housing prices inside the belt increased 400% since 1995, while developers leap over the grain zone to build car-dependent suburbs that generate exactly the congestion the belt was designed to prevent. The congestion charge was revolutionary when introduced in 2003, reducing central London traffic by 30%. Then exemptions accumulated, electric vehicles flooded the zone, and delivery vans multiplied during pandemic online shopping explosions. Current congestion levels have returned to pre-charge baselines while drivers pay £15 daily for the privilege of sitting in the same traffic. That is not a solution. That is a subscription to the problem. Berlin demonstrates what happens when history forces urban planning into impossible situations. The devastation of World War II and subsequent division created a city with no functional center. West Berlin developed around Kurfürstendamm, while East Berlin focused on Alexanderplatz, leaving modern Berlin with two competing downtown areas, neither of which serves the unified city efficiently. The reunification infrastructure mismatch remains visible 35 years later. East Berlin streets were designed for minimal private vehicle ownership, while West Berlin prioritized automotive mobility. Connecting these incompatible systems created traffic patterns that confuse navigation apps and frustrate residents who remember when their half of the city made sense. The S-Bahn and U-Bahn systems still reflect Cold War separation, with lines that end abruptly where walls once stood. The graffiti situation represents planning failure rather than artistic expression. Building owners face fines for unpainted facades, yet anti-graffiti enforcement remains inconsistent across districts. Some neighborhoods maintain pristine surfaces, while others resemble abandoned industrial zones. This is not edgy urban character. This is inconsistent municipal governance made visible on every surface. Beijing built 6 ring roads to solve traffic and created 6 concentric circles of gridlock instead. Each ring was supposed to handle traffic that the previous ring could not accommodate. Each ring filled to capacity within years of completion. The 7th ring road now extends 940 kilometers around the metropolitan area, proving that highway expansion creates demand rather than satisfying it. The traditional Hutong neighborhoods provided human-scale urban living for centuries before planners decided they were obstacles to modernization. Demolishing these communities for 8-lane boulevards destroyed the pedestrian fabric that made Beijing walkable while creating roads that became parking lots during rush hour. The city added 1,000 new vehicles daily throughout the 2000s while systematically eliminating the neighborhoods designed for walking. The subway system carries 10 million daily passengers through a network expanded rapidly after 2008. Stations designed for 4 million now operate at 250% capacity during peak hours. Subway pushers compress passengers into carriages while platforms require crowd control barriers to prevent dangerous overcrowding. The license plate lottery system restricts new vehicle registrations with odds of 1 in 2,000, yet congestion continues increasing because existing vehicles never disappear. Moscow organized itself around the MKAD Ring Road, a 109-kilometer orbital that was supposed to separate city from suburb. Instead, it created the most reliably congested highway in Europe. Average speeds during rush hour drop below 10 kilometers per hour, while drivers spend an estimated 210 hours annually stuck in traffic, the equivalent of nearly 9 full days per year watching brake lights. The metro system compensates by going extremely deep, with some stations exceeding 80 meters underground. This engineering necessity from Cold War civil defense planning means that reaching your platform requires 3-minute escalator rides that add 20 minutes to round-trip commutes. Winter temperatures averaging -10°C meet a street design that prioritizes vehicle movement over pedestrian survival. Sidewalks become ice sheets, while road salt budgets protect driving lanes. The city that could have pioneered cold-climate urban design instead created an environment where walking becomes seasonal and car dependency becomes inevitable, despite one of the world's best metro systems sitting 80 meters below the frozen sidewalks. Hong Kong faces geographic constraints that excuse nothing about its planning failures. Victoria Peak blocks expansion upward, while the harbor limits expansion outward, yet planners responded by creating the most expensive housing market on Earth, rather than addressing the constraints creatively. Average apartment sizes have decreased 25% since 1990, while prices increase 500%. Land reclamation created new territory throughout Hong Kong's history, but the process has slowed as environmental concerns and Chinese government restrictions limit expansion. The dependency on creating land rather than efficiently using existing land means that planning always chases geography rather than mastering it. Housing solutions become engineering projects rather than policy decisions. The MTR system achieves efficiency that other cities envy, yet overcrowding during peak hours creates passenger density that violates the personal space residents pay premium prices to obtain in their tiny apartments. The trains run perfectly on time to deliver you into crowds where breathing requires strategy. Like this video if your capital chose monuments over residents. Subscribe for more urban planning reality checks.